Welcome to the world of science fiction where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The station's alarms didn't blare when the warship arrived. It limped into Dock 7 on silent thrusters, its hull scorched black by plasma fire. Jace Arden wiped grease from his hands and squinted through the observation window. The vessel was a Crithian Arrow, a design older than his grandparents, with wings like shattered blades. Only one person flew those relics anymore, Commander Vera Sol, the silent tempest of the Starborn fleet. Jace had heard the stories, how she'd held the Cerulean Pass against 3 armadas, how her voice could make warlords kneel, but the woman who stepped onto his docking ramp was smaller than he'd imagined. Her silver armor was dented, her crest, a twin moon cycle, half melted away. She didn't speak, just leveled a gaze at him that could freeze a star. "You're the mechanic." Her voice was rough, like gravel under boots. "Only one here," Jace said, nodding at the empty station. "Jace Arden." She tossed him a credit chip. "Fix the thrusters. I leave in 6 hours." He almost laughed. The ship's entire port side was held together by wishful thinking and prayer. But he pocketed the chip. "I'll see what I can salvage." Up close, the damage was worse. The Crithian's hull plates were welded haphazardly, its ion vents clogged with debris. Jace ran a hand along a gash in the metal. Too clean for battle damage. Sabotage. Someone had tried to kill her. Inside, the ship smelled of ozone and old blood. The cockpit's glass was cracked, the navigation array flickering. A child's drawing was pinned to the dash, a stick-figure warrior under twin moons. Faded, carefully preserved. Jace hesitated, then peeled back a warped panel near the engine core. Beneath the grime, he found it. The original crest, etched into the bulkhead. A twin moon cycle, entwined with a melody of stars. Crithian House Sol's mark. It was scared, but not gone. He glanced at the docking bay doors. Vera hadn't followed him in. She was outside, staring at the void, her shoulders rigid. A soldier waiting for the next war. Jace made a decision. He spent 5 hours on the thrusters, yes, but the 6th hour, he stole. With a stolen can of Terran cobalt paint and a vibro brush, he traced the crest's hidden lines. Not erasing the scars, highlighting them, making the stars glow like they'd just been born. When Vera returned, he was bolting the last panel shut. "Thrusters are stable," he said. "Won't win any races, but she'll fly." Vera nodded, then froze. Her eyes locked on the hull, on the resurrected crest, shimmering under the station lights. For the first time, the silent tempest looked afraid. "You saw it," she whispered. Jace shrugged. Figured it was important. Her hand trembled as she touched the twin moons. "They erased House Sol from history. Even my own fleet denies it existed." A breath. "How did you know?" Jace wiped paint from his fingers. "Because no one fights this hard for something they've forgotten." Vera's armor creaked as she clenched her fists. Then, softly, a sound like a sob, swallowed before it could escape. And Jace realized. He hadn't just repaired a ship. He'd awakened a soul. Vera did not thank him. She stood frozen before the shimmering crest, her armored fingers tracing the grooves of the twin moons. The cobalt paint caught the station's dim light, making the stars etched between them seem to flicker like distant suns. Jace waited, grease-streaked hands shoved into his pockets, unsure if he'd crossed a line. Then, without a word, she turned and walked into her ship, the hatch sealed behind her with a hiss. Jace exhaled. Maybe that was a mistake. But an hour later, she returned. This time, she wasn't wearing her battle armor. Just a simple flight suit, its sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms mapped with old scars. She carried a small metal box under one arm. "You're still here," she said, as if she'd expected him to flee. Jace smirked. "It's my station." She set the box on a workbench. It opened with a whisper, revealing a cluster of holocrystals, each one pulsing faintly. "Family archives." "You asked how I knew the crest. Jace said carefully. But you didn't answer my question. Why's a starborn commander flying a relic? Vera's jaw tightened. For a moment, he thought she'd walk away again. Then she tapped the nearest crystal. A hologram flared to life. A Crithian man with the same sharp eyes as Vera, standing before a grand hall. My father, she said, last lord of House Sol. The image shifted. War. Fire in the sky. The hall crumbling. The Dominion burned our histories. Vera continued, voice low. Said we were traitors. I was 8 when they took me. Raised me to serve the very fleet that erased my name. Her fingers curled into fists. This ship was my father's. I rebuilt it in secret. Every bolt. Every wire. Jace stared at the hologram. And the crest. Buried under repairs. I thought, if I restored it, they'd notice. Come for me. She looked at him, and for the first time, her gaze wasn't icy. It was tired. But you saw it anyway. Jace picked up a rag, wiping engine grease from his hands. I've got a rule. Never let a good ship die ugly. A snort. Almost a laugh. You're strange, human. Been told that before. She hesitated, then slid the box toward him. There's more damage. Not just the hull. Jace lifted an eyebrow. You asking for another repair? I'm asking, she said slowly, if you can hide it. The whispered truth. 3 days passed. Jace learned 3 things about Vera Sol. She drank her coffee black, with a pinch of salt. Crithian custom. Balances bitterness. She slept upright, back against a wall, hand on her sidearm. She hated owing debts. Every time he fixed something, repaired the ship's failing life support, recalibrated the weapons array, she countered with a gift. A dagger from her belt. A star chart of safe routes. Once, a live plasma coil, still humming with energy. You keep this up, I'll think you like me, Jace teased, tossing the coil between his hands. Vera didn't smile. I don't. But that night, as he worked under the ship's belly, she crouched beside him. Why are you out here alone? Jace tightened a bolt. Same reason you are. Didn't fit where they put me. Earth had exiled him for modding a military freighter, turning a warship into a hospital vessel. They called it treason. I called it common sense. Vera was silent for a long moment. Then, the Starborn would have executed you. Yeah. What would you have done? She looked at the crest on her ship. I would have given you a medal. Jace laughed, but stopped when he saw her face. She wasn't joking. The storm arrives. On the 4th day, the scanners screamed. Jace bolted upright in his bunk. The station's eye blared. Incoming vessels. 3. Hostile SciFiStories. Vera was already moving, armor snapping into place. Dominion raiders. Her voice was steel. They've tracked me. Jace swore. Weapons? None that matter. She tossed him a pistol. Can you fight? He caught it. I can run. The first ship opened fire. The impact rocked the station, throwing Jace into a wall. Alarms wailed. Oxygen hissed from a ruptured line. Vera grabbed his arm, hauling him up. Engine room, she ordered. Now. They sprinted through shuddering corridors. Behind them, metal screamed as docking clamps tore free. Jace skidded into the engine bay, just as the entire outer wall exploded. Light. Heat. The vacuum of space yawned beyond the breach, sucking everything toward it. Jace grabbed a pipe, holding on his tools, crates. The damn coffee machine flew past him into the void. Vera didn't flinch. She planted her boots, gripped her ship's landing gear, and fired her sidearm into the storm. The shot struck true. A raider's fuel line. The ship detonated in a fireball. But the second ship pivoted. Its cannons glowed. Target locked. Vera met Jace's eyes. For the first time, he saw fear in them. Then, a new sound. A roar, deep as a planet's core. Something massive dropped out of warp above the station. A ship, but not a raider. A starborn dreadnought, and its guns were aimed at the Dominion. The dreadnought's cannons lit up the void like a supernova. Jace shielded his eyes as the remaining raider ships shattered under the barrage, their hulls peeling apart like paper. The shockwave rattled the station, knocking him to his knees. By the time the debris cleared, only silence remained, and the looming shadow of the starborn warship. Vera didn't lower her weapon. Her fingers tightened around the grip. "That's the Eclipse," she said, voice hollow. "Admiral Drake's flagship." Jace swallowed. "Friend of yours?" Her silence was answer enough. The boarding party. The docking clamps hissed as the dreadnought connected. Within minutes, a squad of starborn soldiers marched in, their silver and black armor polished to a mirror shine. At their head stood Admiral Drake, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face like carved stone. His eyes locked onto Vera, then flicked to Jace. Cold. Calculating. "Commander Sol," Drake said, "you've been difficult to find." Vera didn't bow. "I wasn't hiding." "No, you were fleeing." Drake stepped closer. "The Dominion ambush at Kessar V. You were warned. Yet you went alone. Why?" Jace saw it, the slight tremor in Vera's fingers. She was weighing her words. "I had intel," she said finally. "A lead on House Sol's archives." Drake's gaze flicked to the freshly painted crest on her ship. His lip curled. "Sentiment." He spat the word like poison. "The Dominion is hunting you, Sol, and you waste time on dead symbols." Jace cleared his throat. "Hi, station owner here." Drake's glare could have melted steel. "And you are?" "Jace Arden, mechanic, unpaid landlord of this very unstable tin can." He gestured to the breached wall, "which, by the way, is currently leaking oxygen." Drake ignored him. "Sol, you're coming back to the fleet. The High Command has questions." Vera didn't move. "And if I refuse?" The Admiral's hand rested on his sidearm. "Then I'll have to assume this human has compromised you." Jace's stomach dropped. Vera's voice turned deadly soft. "Try it." The air crackled with tension. The starborn soldiers shifted, fingers brushing triggers. Then, a low, grinding groan echoed through the station. The damaged support beam above Drake's head snapped. Jace lunged, yanking the Admiral aside just as a half-ton of metal crashed where he'd stood. The soldiers scrambled back, weapons raised. Drake stared at Jace, then the wreckage. His expression was unreadable. "You saved me." Jace shrugged. "Yeah. Well, still fixing the place." A beat. Then Drake exhaled sharply. "Sol, you have 1 solar cycle to report to the Eclipse." He turned to leave, then paused. "And, mechanic." Jace tensed. "Pray we don't meet again." The starborn marched out. The docking clamps disengage. Silence. Vera finally lowered her gun. "You shouldn't have done that." Jace rubbed his neck. "Which part? The saving him thing, or the sarcasm?" "Both." But there was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion. He nudged her shoulder. "So, we've got a day before the fleet comes knocking. What's the plan?" Vera looked at her ship, at the crest he'd restored. Then, quietly, "I need to finish what I started. The ghosts of House Sol. They worked through the night." Vera led him deep into the Crithian Arrow's belly, to a sealed compartment even Jace hadn't noticed. Inside, a holotable, ancient but functional. She activated it, and the air filled with flickering images, maps, battle plans, a family tree stretching back centuries. "The Dominion didn't just destroy my house," she murmured. "They stole our legacy, our voice." Her fingers traced a star chart, but my father hid copies, scattered them. "This ship holds the last key." Jace studied the data. "And the starborn? They don't know. They suspect." Her jaw clenched. "That's why Drake wants me back. Not for answers, for silence." Jace whistled. So, galactic conspiracy. Cool. Vera almost smiled. Then the holodeck glitched, a fragment of audio crackling to life. A man's voice, warm and weary. Vera, little storm. If you hear this, remember the luminal code. Her breath hitched. Father. The message dissolved into static. Jace hesitated. Luminal code. Vera's eyes burned. A weapon. A song. I don't know, but I will find it. The choice. Dawn crept through the station's cracked viewports. Jace sat on the docking ramp, nursing a cup of sludge-like coffee. Vera joined him, her armor scuffed, her face drawn. You should go, he said. She stiffened. What? You've got a galaxy to save, right? He forced a grin. Can't do that from a backwater station. Vera stared at him. Then, slowly, she reached into her belt and placed something in his palm, a tiny silver moon, half of the House Sol crest. Come with me. Jace's pulse stuttered. What? You're the only one who saw the crest, she said. The only one who listened. Her voice softened. I don't want to do this alone. The words hung between them. Jace looked at the moon in his hand, at the woman who'd walked through fire and still carried her father's hope. Then he stood, brushing dust off his pants. Well, somebody's got to keep your ship flying. Vera exhaled, a sound almost like relief. The Starborn would come. The Dominion would hunt them. But in that moment, as the twin suns rose beyond the station, Jace made his choice. And for the first time in years, Vera Sol wasn't alone. The jump to hyperspace was rougher than Jace expected. The Crithian arrow groaned as it tore through the void, its aging frame protesting the strain. Jace clung to the co-pilot's seat, teeth rattling, as the stars outside streaked into blinding ribbons of light. Vera's hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, but her knuckles were white. You good? Jace asked, gripping the armrests. She didn't look at him. I've made this jump before. Yeah, but did the ship survive? A flicker of amusement crossed her face. Then the console beeped. A warning. Approaching destination. Crithian dead zone. The ship dropped out of warp with a shudder. Jace's stomach lurched. Outside the viewport stretched a graveyard of broken worlds, a sector of space littered with the skeletal remains of dead starships and shattered orbital platforms. At its center hung Crith, Vera's homeworld, or what was left of it. The planet was cracked open, its continents scorched black, its oceans boiled away. Jace swallowed. They really didn't leave much, huh? Vera's voice was flat. The Dominion doesn't believe in leaving survivors, or witnesses. She guided the ship toward the planet's course, weaving through debris fields. The scanners chirped. No life signs, no energy readings, just silence. Then, suddenly, a signal. Faint, encrypted. Vera's breath caught. There. A lone structure jutted from the ruins. A tower half buried in the planet's wreckage. Its surface was carved with the same twin-moon cycle as her crest. House Sol's last stronghold. The Tower of Echoes. Landing was impossible. The tower stood on an unstable shelf of rock, its foundations crumbling. We'll have to jump, Vera said, strapping on a grav harness. Jace eyed the distance between the ship and the tower. Define jump. She tossed him a harness. Pray your boots magnetize. They leaped. For one terrifying second, Jace was falling, the dead world yawning beneath him. Then his boots locked onto the tower's metal siding with a clang. He exhaled. Okay, that sucked. Vera was already moving, scaling the tower's side like a shadow. Jace followed, his fingers numb against the freezing metal. At the top, a sealed door. Vera pressed her palm to the scanner. Nothing. She tried again. Nothing. Jace frowned. Maybe it needs. Voice authorization required, the tower intoned. Vera hesitated. Then, softly, she sang. A melody, 3 notes, rising and falling like a lullaby. The door hissed open. Jace blinked. Was that the luminal code? She whispered. My father's song. Inside, the tower was alive. Holograms flickered to life. Archives, schematics, 1,000 years of Crithian history preserved in light. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it, a single crystal shard, pulsing with blue fire. Vera approached it like a pilgrim. This is it, she breathed. The code. The last song of House Saul. Jace stepped closer. What does it do? She lifted the shard. It remembers. The moment her fingers touched it, the tower shook. Alarms blared. The holograms flashed red. Warning. Dominion signature detected. Vera's head snapped up. They followed us. Jace rushed to the window. In the distance, 3 sleek black warships pierced the debris field, their cannons charging. Time to go, he said. Vera clutched the shard. Not without this. They ran. The fall. The tower trembled as the first Dominion barrage hit. Chunks of rock and metal rained down as they leaped back toward the ship. Jace's harness whined, its magnets struggling. Below them, the planet's fissures glowed. Lava, rising. Faster, Vera shouted. They'd reached the ship just as the tower collapsed, swallowed by Krith's quartz. Jace slammed the hatch shut. Go, go, go. The Arrow's engines roared to life. The Dominion ships opened fire. Vera pulled the ship into a gut-wrenching spin, weaving through the storm of plasma. Jace gripped the console, his knuckles white. We can't outrun them, he yelled. Vera's eyes locked onto the shard in her hand. Then, decisively, she slotted it into the ship's console. The Arrow's systems flared to life. Luminal code activated. The ship intoned. The view screen filled with light. Not warp, not fire. Music, 1,000 voices singing in harmony. A frequency that made the very stars shiver. The Dominion ships stalled, their systems glitching, their weapons failing. Vera didn't hesitate. She punched the thrusters. The Arrow screamed into hyperspace, leaving the dead world and its hunters behind. The truth. Hours later, in the quiet of the ship's hold, Jace finally asked, So, that thing's a weapon? Vera turned the shard in her hands. No, it's a record. A memory of every Crithian who ever lived. Their voices. Their stories. She looked at him. The Dominion didn't just kill my people. They tried to erase them. This proves they existed. Jace whistled. That's a hell of a thing to carry. She nodded. Now you see why they want me silenced. The ship hummed around them. Somewhere, deep in its systems, the code still sang. Jace leaned back. So what now? Vera's gaze hardened. Now we fight back. The eclipse awaited them at the edge of Dominion space. Vera's fingers hovered over the comms panel. The luminal code pulsed in its cradle, its soft blue glow casting shadows across the cockpit. Jace watched her hesitate, something he'd never seen her do before. You sure about this? He asked. She exhaled. No. Then she opened the channel. Admiral Drake's face filled the screen, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the Eclipse's bridge hummed with activity. Commander Sol, he said coolly. You're late. Vera didn't flinch. I found it. Drake's eyes flicked to the shard. A muscle in his jaw twitched. And you brought it here. I brought it home. Silence. Then, prepare to be boarded. The trial of House Saul. The starborn fleet surrounded them. Jace counted 12 warships, their cannons trained on the Arrow. This feels like a trap, he muttered. Vera adjusted her armor. It is. The moment they stepped onto the Eclipse, armed escorts seized them. Not roughly, but not gently either. They were marched through the ship's gleaming halls to the war chamber, where the high command waited. Drake stood at the head of the table, flanked by officers whose faces were carved from stone. "Vera Sol," he said, "you stand accused of treason." Jace tensed. "Treason? She just saved your—" A guard shoved him back. Vera didn't react. "My crime." Drake activated a whole screen. Footage of the dead world, of the tower collapsing under Dominion fire. "You awakened the luminal code. You risked exposing the fleet to a war we cannot win." Vera laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You mean a war you chose to lose." The room stilled. She stepped forward. House Sol didn't fall to the Dominion. It was sacrificed, traded for a ceasefire. My father's song proves it. The officers exchanged glances. Drake's face darkened. "Enough." He gestured to the guards. "Take the human to the brig. Commander Sol answers to the tribunal." Jace lunged, but Vera caught his arm. "Trust me," she whispered. Then she turned and sang. A single note. The luminal code in her palm flared, its light spreading like wildfire. The ship's systems stuttered. The holograms flickered and then changed. No longer battle plans. Proof. Records of Starborn High Command meetings, of whispered deals with the Dominion, of House Sol's betrayal. Drake's composure cracked. "Silence her." The guards hesitated. Vera lifted the code high. "You erased us, but we remember." And then, the fleet rebelled. Officers turned on Drake. Soldiers lowered their weapons. The Eclipse's captain, an old Crithian with scars matching Vera's, stepped forward. "House Sol lives," he said softly. Then louder, "And the Starborn remember their oath." Chaos erupted. The last stand. Jace lost sight of Vera in the fray. He ducked plasma fire, grappling with a guard for his pistol. The war chamber became a battlefield. Starborn against Starborn, loyalty against lies. Then the alarms blared. Dominion Armada approaching. Drake, bleeding from a gash on his temple, seized the comms. "All ships, fire on the Arrow." Jace's blood ran cold. He tore free, sprinting for the hangar. He had to reach the ship, had to reach her. The Song of Dawn. The Arrow was already under attack when Jace got there. Dominion fighters strafed the docking bay, their guns tearing through metal. Vera stood at the ship's ramp, the code in one hand, her sidearm in the other. "Jace," she spotted him, relief flashing across her face. "We need to go, now." He vaulted over debris, sliding into the cockpit beside her. The engine screamed to life. Outside, the Eclipse burned. Vera's hands flew over the controls. "Hold on." The Arrow shot through the hangar doors, straight into the heart of the battle. Dominion dreadnoughts, Starborn cruisers, a storm of fire and fury. Jace gripped his seat. "We can't fight this." Vera's eyes burned. "We don't have to." She slotted the luminal code into the ship's core. The song began. It rippled across the void, a wave of light and sound. Dominion ships froze, their systems overwhelmed. Starborn vessels answered, their comms flooding with the same melody. A chorus, a reckoning. And then, the Dominion retreated. Epilogue. The Mechanic and the Storm. They buried Drake in the stars. The Starborn fleet, now under new command, offered Vera her rank back. She refused. Jace found her on the Arrow's hull weeks later, repainting the crest under a nebulous glow. "Regrets?" he asked. She wiped sweat from her brow. "None." He tossed her a wrench. "Good, because we've got a galaxy to fix." She caught it, smiling. Together, and as the ship's engines hummed to life, the luminal code sang with them, a lullaby for the lost, and an anthem for the dawn. The end.